Thank you for coming out through all the weather, all the snow and hail and all that stuff. Cell phones, if you have them, would you turn them off? Thank you. So I'm Stephen Yenser, and a member of UCLA English Department, one of the sponsors for the series, which has been going on for 50 years, nearly, or about. And they are made possible these days by the English Department because of the sponsorship there, and still the Office of Cultural and Recreational Affairs, which is where they began all these decades ago. They used to be in the recreation center on campus, wonderful setting above the swimming pool, into which everybody would jump after some readings, one reading. And of course, the Hammer Public Programs, led by Claudia Bester, who's the best. Some say she's even bester. We all know that you can't really read a good poem. You can only reread it. But it's always good to be reminded of that fact, especially when we're about to listen to poems so rich that several rereadings are in order. Nick Laird's poetry is that rich in part because it responds to a couple of desiderata. On the one hand, he wants to attend closely to each word and phrase, and as a result, each carries a good deal of freight. On the other hand, he wants to respect impulse, or to put it the other way around, he wants to feel the work respond to him. It's a little like riding your horse. As he says in one passage, I like to feel the work I am exerting being changed. See? You got to sit with that for a second. It's by you, and you don't realize what he's done. In another poem, he puts it this way: I say poetry is weather for the mind, not an umbrella. I'm sure that his reading will make it evident that he's Northern Irish, not American. So it is notable that his work fulfills a vision that Walt Whitman had for American verse. You all know that this is Whitman's bicentenary. He was born 200 years ago, and there's actually a marathon reading celebrating Whitman's work on Jant's Steps here on campus tomorrow from 12 to 3. So if you happen to be on campus or you just want to hear some great poetry, come round. In his speculative essay, Democratic Vistas, Whitman foresaw new law forces, as he called them, for poetry, and anticipated a fresh approach based on, and I'm quoting him, not merely the pedagogue forms, correct, regular, familiar with precedents. Those would be, I think, to use Nick's term, umbrellas rather than weather. But on a language, he imagined, that would come about one day that would be fanned by the breath of nature, in his words, that would eventuate in books composed on the assumption that the process of writing is not a half-sleep, but in the highest sense an exercise, a gymnast's struggle, that the reader is to do something for himself or herself and always be on the alert. And indeed, to change the metaphor, he changed it, to construct the poem on the basis of hints and suggestions the poet provides. It's all a process that's all the more strenuous when the reader is a listener, as you are tonight. But I don't mean that you should all be prepared to work up a sweat and forego the pleasures this evening. Depending on his selection, you might hear poems that touch on contemporary politics, and poems that improvise entertainingly on templates so familiar that you might think you could write them. You can't, but you might think so at first. Templates like the consumer questionnaire, and a series of prompts in a video game. And that last, that series of prompts in a video game, I hope he reads that poem, is, to Whitman's point, the kind of poem that the reader has to construct for himself or herself. So it's not all a gymnast struggle, and I'm sure you will have fun. Nick Laird.
I wouldn't be too sure. Hello. So I'm delighted to be here reading at the Hammer Museum. Many thanks to Stephen Yenser for that kind introduction and for inviting me, and to Alison Lambert for organising it. I haven't read in LA for 10 years. And the last time was on my book tour for my second novel. We were driving to the bookstore to do the reading, and we were late, and my driver rang the store and said, "Oh, you know, we're going to be 10 minutes late." And the woman said, "Oh, don't worry, there's only 2 people here." And we were stuck at the Gene Autry interchange, which I remember, and so sure enough, we got there, and I got to the top of the stairs and looked, there's just rows and rows of empty seats. And at the front, there was these 2 guys sitting at opposite ends of the front row, and one of them was dressed in a very large fedora and had bare feet, and the other one was like in a duffel coat, clutching a plastic bag full of loose leaf sheets of what I correctly guessed was his own novel. And then when I started to read, the guy who worked at the bookstore just started slamming shut the chairs at the back and just kept going all the way to the front row. So anyway, this is better than that, at least so far. So yes, I'm going to read some poems. You should forego any ideas of enjoying them, but we'll just get through it together. I'll read a poem called "To the Woman at the Check-in Desk at Newark Airport." To the woman at the United Airlines check-in desk at Newark. Shanique, I am in time, and I know your fight is hard. The fight is hard for everyone alive, and all those bodies in departures are naked under clothes and scarred. That granted, even deeper scratches welt and heal in days, though still they smart on contact. And I never really cared for the terms I struck with earth, more total war than limited skirmish. I seethe, Shanique, I drink, I smoke weed and seek relief from mental anguish, the peopled life, car horns sounding down on Houston. All 3 kinds of knowledge fox me, outer, inner, pure mathematics. But I understand your relatives are dying also, and I know the days are slow, the years fast, that these are facts, however surprising. Like you, I think the worst is yet to come. Plus, there's time lifting everything in sight, Shanique, pocketing orchids and mothers, the little white pebble-dashed bungalows. You in your small corner and me in mine. Let me be clear and accommodative, more like water than ice, and raise my hands to show I mean no harm and that I'm stupid and malicious. And if I'm trying to be fearless, I know it gives me no right to act like this. What's understood is I'll be filed beneath the pricks, and fair enough. Very seldom do I note the world wears a single face with endless variations, and even then, Shanique, it tends to be a face like yours, one particularly fine. Speaking of which, Your fluorescent orange lipstick lip curls up at me with such distaste I have to sit down now on my case at the rush of shame I feel, and also love, and of course lust, hate, remorse. I read a wee poem called The Politics of Feeling, which was in Granter a couple of weeks ago. One of those commission poems, and they give you the title and they say, can you do anything with it? I was thinking about, I've been in America for 10 years, I teach at NYU, and all the Irish Americans in the government at the minute. So this poem is dedicated to Bannon, Conway, Kelly, McConnell, Mulvaney, Pence, and Ryan. It sounds like the Seven Dwarfs when you say it like that. We could add Patrick Shanahan, who is our new Defence Secretary now, but the politics of feeling. I'm going to level with you now about the despicable phoniness of those who declare they're going to level with you now. Also, let me make it abundantly clear that those who say, let me make it abundantly clear, are shitting in your milk. There's a sickness at the core of this, but let them scream whatever they want. We will size it up beautifully. We will size it up without frenzy or sloth or pretense. And let it be noted that it has been noted. I am sitting here very still in the question of myself, and by the time this poem appears, I expect I will be even whiter. As you are aware, the Irish only recently got to be white, but some of us seem to be liking it an awful lot. My sandwich is finished, but I sit on in the middle of the square, descented by the lassitude of Thursday and this recurring sinus infection. Abroad remains the trio of affinities, the body one inhabits, God, the cause or lack thereof of all level of outrageous detail. And the other animals who walk around me endlessly in circles, the day is a massacre of clarity, clouds erupting out of their skin. Whiteness on whiteness over the dogs in the dog run growling and sniffing and crapping. Over the jet of the fountain, endlessly replenishing the crest of itself in whitely continuous effort. The curled up leaves at your feet, desiccated reds and browns, patches of exhausted grass, the Japanese jazz band, the texture and temperature of the bench. Why is there this? For sensation? For pleasure? See if that stands up. I hold in my palm, a few at a time, the facts of cashew nuts from the bag of facts of cashew nuts. Everything already is fraying at the edges, if not completely gone. Everyone is mourned in turn, and that stench is the stench of decay from the trash can. Something rotting in a bag of skin. Look at it and away. If someone despises you, the work is still to do nothing despicable, to be oppositional, but patient and cheerful as your own mother, if she wasn't pretending. But what then? What is next? I no longer find it surprising that one of the Wi-Fi networks coming up as my home option is Class War 5G. Yesterday, I noticed another had appeared, named Patriotic Socialist. I'm telling myself to get up and go when a guy slopes past, pushing his kid in a stroller like I used to. The lovely dullness of those intervals, just shoving the stroller into the future. On the next bench, a squirrel surveys us, sits on its hunkers, munches. I flick half a cashew off my sleeve and into infinity and snap the Tupperware container shut and stand up to brush myself off before walking out into Manhattan like a good European as the rich get richer and the poor get fucked. So, I read this title poem, Feel Free, from the new book. It's longish, 3 sections. And mentions Harvey, that's my son, and Catherine, that's my daughter, and a place called Lochmallen, which is near where I'm from in County Tyrone in Northern Ireland. Belted Galloways, it's a kind of cow with a big stripe around its tummy. Place called Argos, which is not the Greek place. It's like a kind of store you go into, and they have these catalogs, and you pick something and then you buy it. We used to call it the laminated book of dreams. It's things like toasters, and anyway. You don't need to know this, it's fine. It's 3 sections. The thing it mentions in Cregandevsky is a court tomb, which is a Neolithic court tomb, which is like a big rock, and then it's held up by other rocks, and you can walk into it. Feel free. To deal with all the sensational loss, I like to interface with earth. I like to do this in a number of ways. I like to feel the work I am exerting being changed, the weight of my person refigured, and I like to hang above the ground, thus snorkeling, hammocks, alcohol. I also like the mind to feel a kind of neutral buoyancy, and to that end I set aside a day a week, Shabbat, to not act. Having ceded independence to the sunset, I will not be shaving, illuminating rooms, or raising the temperature of food. If occasionally I like to feel the leavening of being near a much larger, unnatural tension, I walk off a Sunday through the high fields of Blanket Bog, Saxifrage, a few thin belted Galloways, rounding Lochmallen to stand by the form of beauty upheld in a scrubby acre at Cregandevsky, where I do duck and enter under a capstone mapped by rival empires of yellow feather moss and powdery white lichen. I like then to stop, crouched, and press my back on a housing of actual rock, coldness which lives for a while on the skin. And I like when I give you the night feed, Harvey, how you're concentrating on it, fists clenched, eyes shut, like this is bliss. 2. I like a steady disruption. I like it when the solid mantle turns to shingle and water rushes up it over and over in love. My white noise machine from Argos is set to crashing wave, but I'm not averse to the presence of numerous and minute quanta moving very fast in unison, occasions when a light wind undulates the ears of wheat, or a Hessian sack of pearl barley seed is sliced with a pocket knife and pours. I like the way it sounds, pattering on stone. I like how the starlings over Monte cohere and separate their bodies into one cyclonic symphony, and I like that the hawk of the mind catches at their pulse, call, arc. I like the excitation passing as a shadow ripple back, and how the bag is snatched, rolled slack, straight, falciform, mouthing, bulbing, a pumping heart. I like to interface with millions of coloured pixels depicting attractive people procreating on a screen, itself dependent on rare metals mined by mud-grey children who trudge up bamboo scaffolding above a greyish-red lake of belching mud. I like how the furnace burning earth instills in me reflexive gestures of timidity, self-pity and deference as I walk across the kinder surfaces, grass, say, or sand, unable ever to meet with my eyes the gaze of the sun. 3. I can imagine that my first and 5th marriages will be to the same human, a woman, the first marriage working well enough that we decide to try again as soon as it's, mutually convenient. I can see that. I like the fact we're supercooled star matter, even if I can't envisage you as anything other than warm and bleeding. The thing is, I can be persuaded fairly easily to initiate immune responses by the fake safety signals of national anthems, cleavage, family photographs, country lanes, large-eyed mammals, fireworks, the King James Bible, Nina Simone singing the 12th of Never, cave paintings, coffins, dolphins, dolmens. But I like it also when the fat impasto of the canvas gets slashed by a tourist with a claw hammer and a glimpse is caught of what you couldn't say. Entanglement, I like. Spooky action at a distance, analogizing some little thing, including this long glance across the escalators, or how you know the song before you switch the station on. When a photon of light meets a half-silvered mirror and splits, one meets the superposition of two, being twinned, and this repeats. Tickling your back, Catherine, to get you to sleep. I like to lie here with my eyes closed and think about my school friends' houses before choosing one to walk through slowly, room by sunlit room. So, in that first poem to the woman at the check-in desk, I mentioned mothers dying, and some of the poems in this last book about my mother dying. She died a couple of years ago. This is a wee short one called Silk Cut, which was the brand of cigarette my father smoked for 50 years. Silk Cut. I was 5 and stood beside my dad at a junction somewhere in Dublin when I slipped my hand in his and met the red end of a cigarette. But now our hearts are broken. We walk down to the Bray side where we can get a proper pint, and his voice tears up a bit about the emptiness in the house. And we are going home, waiting at the turn for the traffic, when I find I have to stop my hand from taking his. I read a longer poem about that. I couldn't write about my mother dying at all. And then one of those weird commissions, a friend of mine, poet called Paul Muldoon, said, will you write a poem for the Northern Irish Ambulance Service? And I was like, do they need a poem? But apparently they did. So this poem sort of came out of it, and it begins with an ambulance and mentions the Ring of Gullion, which is this sort of incredible natural phenomena in Ireland, where if you drive from Dublin to Belfast, you drive through this old volcano that collapsed, and makes this natural amphitheatre on the motorway. Okay, so it's called the vehicle and the tenor, and as you all know, those are the two parts of a metaphor. When it comes at me in the mirror, with its meaning ramping up until it passes and lowers in pitch, I'm on the bit of the M1 where it bisects the Ring of Gullion, and I switch lanes and let my right foot alleviate its weight on the accelerator of the focus. And the ambulance is faster, and the shift in its report, an effect of the change in the wave's frequency and length on the observer, who is, in this case, me, heading up to Newry Hospice off the red eye, and I lag and have to have the window down for brisk air. If the grief moves in towards me at high speed, the wavelengths I observe are decreased as the frequency increases. I don't know what this means, though I can tell you how it feels. In the cryptic centre of my head, a voice recites a rhyme I read somewhere or heard once or otherwise made up. Let us go to the woods, one little pig cries. But why would we do that? His brother replies. To look for my mother, the little pig cries. But why would we do that? His sister replies. For to kiss her to death, the little pig whispers. What is driving along this but a guided dream, since the road feeds itself in as the planed length time feeds to the mind's lathe to get it trimmed correctly to size? Heavy clouds, the waterlogged fields, a rainbow arcing faintly out to the west, and I keep that with everything I keep to myself. I am either in the midst of it or on my own, or both things are true at the same time. I kill the radio. With a universe to finish, music would endure, though I have no memories left for the moment before, so when I think of you sat slumping on the edge of the mattress, zonked on Zopiclone, small and bald as a wee scaldy, fallen out the nest and found there hours after you were meant to have gone on to bed. At my coming in, you barely raise your head. Your eyes are half shut, and you cannot find the holes for the buttons on your nightie because you have it on you inside out. I know every journey to a source is homecoming. And I'm bombing along the district of songs, along the great road of the fuse towards you, through a depression left by the Calder's collapse. This is the district of poets, the district of the Dorsey meaning doors or gates, the solitary pass to the old kingdom through the earthwork's long involvement. A pair of abrupt Iron Age banks running parallel for a mile or so, an entrenchment, an entrance, all manner and slant of analogy, etc. But when, in the end, we had kissed you to death, we sat and held your cold hands for a half hour more and wiped with tissues all the black stuff bubbling up from your lungs away from your lips and wept a good bit and got up then and folded your clothes and stacked your cards and binned the flowers. And I sat out there in my rental car in the car park as you kept on lying in here, past all metaphor, left by yourself on the cleared stage like a real corpse. I don't have any funny poems. I read a wee poem from the book before this book called Go Giants. Poets, as you know, set themselves restrictions, and the more outre the restriction, I think the more poets enjoy it in some way. You'll see the restriction in this one, but sometimes I think this is quite a clever little autobiography, and other times I think it's just a load of shit. So don't worry if you go with the latter opinion. It's called Go Giants. Go gadget legs. Go right. Go left. Go wrong. Go west. Go down to the sea in ships. Go down to the river and pray. Go fish. Go first. Go forth and multiply. Go in now and say goodbye. Go blind. Go deaf. Go short. Go long. Go to press. Go to pot. Go fuck yourself. Go straight. Go braves. Go jump in a lake. Go hard. Go hide. Go down with a case of. Go ape. Go without. Go patriots. Go halves. Go slow. Go under the knife. Go under the sign of the war shaft. Go one better. Grow great guns. Go south. Go out in the midday sun. Go red. Go blonde. Go vandals. Go tell it on the mountain. Go and sin no more. Go compare. Go nuclear. Go back to E7 from E8. Go paperless. Go cowboys. Go redskins. Go naked. Go to ground. Go ahead. Go abroad. Go to grass. Go slack. Go all ironic. Go down in a blaze of. Go titans. Go for the sake of. Go saints. Go fly a kite. Go against. Go gaga. Go in peace to love and serve the. Go and get help. Go directly to jail. Go down in flames. Go up in smoke. Go for broke. Go tell Aunt Rhodey. Go tell the Spartans. Go to hell. Go into detail. Go for the throat. Epithalamium, a poem for a wedding. You're beeswax and I'm bird shit. I'm mostly harmless. You're irrational. If I'm iniquity, then you're theft. One of us is supercalifragilistic. If I'm the most insane, disgusting filth, you're hardly curiosa. You're bubble wrap to my fingertips. You're winter sleep and I'm the bee dance. And I am menthol and you are eggshell. When you're atrocious, I am spell check. You're the yen. I'm the Nepalese pound. If I'm homesteading, you're radical chic. I'm carpet shock and you're the real. I'm memory foam day on price drop TV and you're the lord of misrule who shrieks when I surface in goggles through duckweed, and I am Trafalgar and you're Waterloo, and frequently it seems to me that I am you and you are me. If I'm the rising incantation, you're the charm, or I am, or you are. So, how's it going? So I'm enjoying it, I don't know. We're almost done. So, do you know this guy, Cinna the Poet? Does that ring any bells? Cinna the Poet, Cinna. He's in Julius Caesar, the Shakespeare play. And he's a real guy. And Catullus was a fan of his at one point, but none of the work is extant, none of the work survived. But in real life, and also in the Shakespeare play, he was killed by Caesar's supporters because he shared the name with one of the conspirators. And he said to them, in the Shakespeare play, he says, no, I'm not Cinna the conspirator, I'm Cinna the poet. And they sort of go, tear him anyway, tear him for his bad verses. So they kill him. He did really write an epic on winds, which is mentioned in this poem. It's what lots of these sort of epics are referred to, but none of them survived. So, sort of unusual for me. This is written in free verse, but it's called Cinna the Poet, and I imagine his voice. I was trying to write like an adult. I had children. I was at the end of something. As I waited at my table by the window for the coffee, I saw that the sirocco had deposited a scrim of dust on the sill overnight. And it was the dark red of powdered blood, and like any of the others of my kind would have done, I graffitied it. In the past, I might have gone for a peace sign or a smiley face or an ejaculating penis, but today I scrawled my name in it and my vocation and left my fingertip ferrous with desert. It felt like stroking suede against the nap, half illicit. The particulates milled by wind and sieved by the distance to the softness of ash or brick dust. I had been adding and subtracting sounds from my epic on the winds that thread the known world, but something like a real poem surfaced then in the dust, in my letters edged with tiny drifts. What I wanted in a small thing was some principle, some vividness that lived both in things small and things great. A desert is red and the dust is red because the stones that make it up were red. It is the iron staged within. They share the rationale of blood. The tone was off. They understand the colour of. Lucinda was filling my demi-tasse and stopped to watch the man, a partisan, standing in the square outside the window. The red cap of all his tribe was too small for his head, which wobbled like a tied balloon as he read the name I'd written on the sill. At the nearer counter, Kestius, mad again, stopped reciting his ode to prostitutes and turned around to get a proper look. I had been thinking how the coffee pouring from the spout and stopping was not unlike the thick tail of a black rat flickering into a drain, and I wasn't listening, and he said it again. My death is standing outside the window, carrying on his shoulder a leg of lamb rolled in darkened butcher paper, and my death is upset and pointing his cigarette at me. How they massed in the streets for their Caesar, that rapist, that racist, that fat narcissist who found the crowd responded best to flattery and three-word phrases framed as an imperative. I do not believe in the imagined realm of perfectness, where nothing ever changes, where everything simply is, and which, according to Plato and Judeo-Christian philosophy, is the true realm of nature. The sense experience, the red dust, the coffee, the leg of lamb, merely illusory. We have no reason to believe in the perfect circle. We have no reason to believe justice exists. There is the endless play of absence and presence, seasons, tides, the moon. I stood up and knocked my notebooks off the table. Long ago, I noted the impossibility of imagining a heaven that doesn't bore us instantly to death. And I don't believe the human body is really a luminous body of white light that moves towards the larger light when it dies. On the odd occasion, I feel amazed to be alive, though not often, to be honest, and not recently. Last summer, when the weather optioned its menace, his priests summoned those born feet first, the albinos, the twins, those afflicted with hair lips. I lived in a state of despair and rage, we all did. I could not remember the last time the political had come to bear on the personal to such a large extent, and I grew up in the Civil War, sitting reading how the world's tallest man had saved a dolphin, or they designed a gun for women to be shot by women, not to shoot them. Last week, after the purge, Kestia stopped me in the toilets to tell me how he'd sealed his major poems in earthen jars and buried them at nightfall by the lilac in his garden. The time is just too real, he said. We are approaching the source, he said. Don't you detect its heat in the night air, in the vividness beneath the skin, how everything is frantic? Now the leader was dead and his supporters on fire, and I stood at a loss on the edge of their anger. You have been there, watching the dark present dispose itself too easily and flow away from me. I could not pass, and when the girl ran up and spat, panicked like a swarm of bees, and I tried to escape and slipped on my papers and fell and hit my head on the stone steps. The flesh is not a vessel emptied out at death. I had the evidence of my own parents. Black stuff bubbles from the lungs to the lips. Why would anyone set aside deities born of this earth that protect the place to privilege metaphysical divinities who do not have that relationship? Sirocco, Mistral, Levante, Ostro. None of them functioned as names exactly, not without following the sign in the eaves or a rounding in the branches. But I was unsure what to do with those sounds and such information, unsure what to do with the inconstancy of things in general. Poetry had not been good for me. It hardened me where I should have been otherwise. What is it anyway to say that one thing is like another? I practice forms of accusation. I came to as they were dousing me in lamp oil. Kestius was howling like a dog and being held back. The girl was going through my bag. I watched my death try and strike a match. I read that wee poem Stephen mentioned. I never read it before out loud, but remember he mentioned about the computer commands. It comes from, I was looking on the BBC website one day and it said there was a game you could play about being a refugee. It was like the choices that a refugee has to make. Something about that was interesting to me. So this poem is about that. Extra life. Press, escape and wait. White light. 5 tender reports. You're in a new room and father has gone missing. Mother suffers but does nothing, watches television, weeps. Your avatar is, it doesn't matter, Basil, Fatu, Ahmed. Do you choose country A or B? A is cheaper but more risky. The living conditions are poor, the onward journey by sea. If you choose B, you have a chance of reaching C by land. But now the trafficker demands the fee up front in cash, and you distrust the way he laughs. Click here if you sleep for a week in a concrete shaft, and then go back and ask. Click here to beg. Get on a truck for 100 hours. The desert is 1,000 miles. The stars are numberless and very close. Sleep in fits and starts. Sleep sitting up. Take it in turns to sleep. Click here if you get robbed. Click here if you get raped. Click here if you get caught. Click here if you're sent back or held for an indefinite term in a processing facility. Press escape and wait. White light. Your character appears. Click here to hop the fence and merge with the foot passengers. As you dock, click to watch the iron moor descend on scores of border agents waiting. Click to turn the keys left in the ignition and ride the Harley off the ramp and into Dover and park it by the cop shop and inside hand the keys across saying, "This is not my motorbike." Click to shiver through the night on a mattress of catalogues and pallets by the bottle bins in the car park of the Argos on Cricklewood Broadway. Press escape and wait. White light. Track the acrobatic sub-Saharan dodging through the gridlock traffic. Click here to crowbar open the articulated truck and board it. Press escape and wait. White light. Watch the boat inflate. Click twice to make it float. Click to lift your kids in. Click to lift your wife. The sea is level as a puddle until backwash from the tanker hits and panic tips you in. Down you go and further, so the vice of water tightens till your chest and spine will surely snap. Click here to save. Click to bring your children back. Click to kiss them on their lips. Click to resurrect your wife and pick the seaweed from her hair. I go and see some guys who are in a homeless shelter in Cricklewood Broadway, and one of the guys was a Syrian refugee, and he told me that whole story about he managed to get onto the ferry in Calais to go across to England, and then the door of the ferry opened, and he thought, shit, there's loads of police there, and then he saw the keys left in this Harley Davidson, so he jumped on the bike and just sort of rode the bike out between them all, and then found the police station in Dover and just parked the bike outside and went in and handed the keys over and said, this isn't my motorbike. Yeah. Okay, so we're almost there. I'm going to read a couple of little poems. So I'll read a poem called Crunch, which is a poem about that kind of dramatizes marital arguments. And then I'll finish with a short poem. You've been very patient. Crunch. It's clear that Schwarzenegger was the acceptable exploration of the Nazis, and the red embroidered velvet book is chained up to the lectern, but you insist that human skin contains so many receptors for gentle pressure, deep pressure, sustained pressure, follicle bending, and minute vibration, that all the edges will get rounded down eventually, and no one ignorant of history ever re-enter. I say, if you miss the actual earth, you should sink your fingers in the soil of the rabbit-foot fern I keep on my desk and water almost never from my thermos of black tea. You say, Nevada palominos at a gallop 100 strong draw the same subsiding trail of pinkish dust across the monotheistic desert as when the Christians took back Spain or Dylan went electric. And I say, saying everything at once is not the same as saying nothing. Lightning is a brief but necessary corrective to the system's electrical imbalance, though you say the sirens are becoming more frequent and the air outside itches your eyes and causes them to weep a gluey substance in the night. I say it's an area of low pressure. You say it's a feature, not a bug. I say maybe some species can be successfully domesticated and some just can't. Deer, for instance, prove remarkably resistant. I turned the sound down and listened. This morning, I was taken with an origin myth where the giant vomits up the earth only after great pain in his stomach. The golden plover, with its two-note song, is the prime glossator of our time, left, right, black, white. Though in real life, there's a mellow set neutrinos pass through does include you. You are really very busy with your multi-volume study of the strictly curtailed dunnage, Minoa, Tunguska, Chernobyl. I say the lizard also spat the sun back out, though no, I don't believe the hoppy chose the desert so they'd never have to not pray for rain. I agree, it is insane. I recommend the moment Pliny held a naked flame against an amber bead and smelt the tang of pine. I knew it to be resin, not a teardrop wept by Neptune. You ask if the word peoples is grammatically correct. I say all the signs conspire to suggest that an inflection point is coming. You claim nothing fucks you like time. I say just because I'm shouting doesn't make me wrong. You think we need to call someone. I say I stayed with a warlord in Split who had the given name of Dragon and a perfectly serviceable coffee table constructed from 4 upstanding shell casings and a square pane of tempered glass. I say poetry is weather for the mind, not an umbrella. I say take Star of Bethlehem for shocks, mustard seed for the deep gloom, occasion for no earthly reason. You'd like to see me alphabetized into my rightful places and the files archived. I'd have you used in combinations of the adjectives and verbs and nouns I'm certain you deserve. You say, drought it was that first gifted us the arch, aqueducts with strict declivities of inches to the mile. But I say, Byzantium was nothing but expansionist slavers and ingenious trash. And the vaulted roof of Wells Cathedral leaves me as impressively empty. You say, the thing with leaving is you have to go somewhere. I am well aware my semen is an avalanche engulfing unsuspecting lunches on the terrace après ski. I am sorry, when I cough up all this black stuff. You say it is invisible from space. I say, have you noticed in the grace of Duncan Edwards an anonymity of style true to both his kind and his kind of generation? You say, the children are listening. We keep on glimpsing the doe and her fawn at the edge of the clearing at dawn and for thousands of years. I say it's not so much cricket that's a metaphor for life, but the other way round. I say my father says the one time he saw his own father cry was after the Munich air disaster. You say of Pangu when he died that his voice became the thunder and his flesh became the earth, his hair, the trees, his sweat, the rain, his bones, the rocks and monuments. And in the end, the rest of us were left as little glossy insects to graze upon his body. I say we need to keep each other close and whisper. You say one must be heavy as an engine, not a rock. I say the working parts operate at such a pitch they're silent, and at this point in the argument you make a kind of grunt. I don't know. I'll finish with a wee poem called Incantation. It's got 3 lines in it that are not mine. You'll see which ones they are. One is by Hart Crane, one is by Frank O'Hara, and one is by Kurt Vonnegut. Incantation. Because we time travel into the future at a blistering 60 minutes an hour, I ask you to sit down and write me one beautiful sentence I might carry in my pocket on the journey when I go, and in the window of the train unfold, oh, you were the best of all my days. Never knowing if the thing is broken or the door between us is still open, you would like me to sit down and write you one beautiful sentence you might carry in your wallet when you leave. And in the cab, you take it out and read, permit me voyage, love, into your hands. Depending where one stands, each circle back is a possible fall, a fail, a spiral. And I would like you to take a few seconds to write me out one beautiful sentence to carry now across the night and ocean. And held up at the gate, I sit down and open. Everything was beautiful and nothing hurt. Thanks very much.